Good morning, Coolest Coast. It's time for Shelf Talk with Tara and Tina. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Shelf Talk with Tara and Tina. We're your hosts. This is Tara Huck of Freshwater Press. I'm Tina Prigge. We have a special guest with us today. Welcome to the program, Patrick Dewane, author of The Accidental Hero. How's it going, Patrick?
It's going well. Great to see you.
Hey, for viewers that might not know, can you tell us a little bit about the book that you wrote, The Accidental Hero? It's a journey of discovery, liberation, and legacy. It's got a pretty unique origin story that I would love to talk about.
Sure. It's about my grandfather and his experience in World War II and how at the end of the war, he was given the assignment to be the commander of the Liberation Party, the advanced party, to go in and liberate southern Czechoslovakia. And they sent him right to the villages, the region where all four of his grandparents had left to come to Wisconsin. In fact, many of many of the Czechs from Stangleville, Michigan area, kind of the northern Manitowoc, southern Kewaunee County region, are from that area. He didn't know it. He had been pursuing the American dream of doing better than his folks and had left the farm and didn't think that he left anything special at all. But what he brought with him was his ability to speak Czech. It was his first language. He was absolutely fluent in it. Didn't start to learn English until he was 6, and in fact spoke English with a bit of an accent, which got him into hot water a couple times in World War II. So this story, however, I didn't know it. I knew my grandfather very well. We would go and visit Grandma and Grandpa, who lived in Two Rivers. We lived in Manitowoc, not even a 10-minute drive. And his war souvenirs were all over his house, and then a lot of great stuff down in the basement. And I'd go sneak down and rummage through things I wasn't supposed to be going through. But Grandpa would not talk about the war. I would say, Grandpa, I'd beg him, Grandpa, tell me a war story. He'd just smoke his Camel straight, say, no, you don't want to hear about that. So when I was a pallbearer at his funeral in '83, and not only did there wasn't a flag on the casket, nobody said a word about World War II. There was no 21 gun salute, no bugler playing taps. So when we lowered him into the ground, I figured, well, guess we buried Grandpa's stories along with him. And then 23 years later, on Christmas, my sister Jane handed me a Christmas present. I unwrapped it, and it was a spiral bound collection of writings. I said, what's this? And my grandfather's picture was in the front of it. I said, did he write about the war? She said, oh, Pat, he wrote about the war and a lot of other things. I think you're going to like this. And then just as his life flipped at the end of World War II the last week, that night my life flipped. I was turning those pages just agog. I could not believe what I was reading. He was a hero in the Battle of the Bulge. It came over on Omaha Beach, but then his sort of awakening, his epiphany about his identity, what it really meant to be bohemian, or bohunk, as the slur was. You dumb bohunk, right?
That's a slur? I call Jason a bohunk all the time. Whoops.
Well,
I mean it very affectionately. So
it can be. It's one of those words that either it's going to prompt a fight or a kiss. So then he realized, got to see the reality, being carried on the shoulders of the townspeople in Domaschlitza, who couldn't believe that they were being liberated, as they said, by one of our own. He got there and found banners in the main square. Word had spread about his arrival because he snuck in with his driver the day before, or 2 days before, into the town of Clenchy, his grandmother's hometown, and stumbled across a meeting of the local resistance. He was there just to see what the place was like. Well, then when he started speaking Czech, and not just Czech, but speaking it in their particular dialect, and he had a name, Konop, that was particular to that region. They're like, no way, he's related to us.
He's one of us.
He's one of us. So when he gets to Domaschlitza, which is now sister cities with Two Rivers, Wisconsin, because of his story, They had banners waiting for him in Czech, so he could read them, saying, "Matt Cunnip, we are liberated by one of our own." And then they found him, picked him up, paraded him around town on the shoulders. That was a picture you just showing, kind of the money shot of his story, his life. Right, that smile is a guy realizing who he really is. Right, that yeah, bohunk can be a term of affection.
I
Uh,
mean, it's amazing that you have that artifact, right? Not only do you have the stories, but that you have that photo that shows that genuine smile. So, I imagine it was emotional and all of the things when you got those documents from your sister. How long did it take from processing all of that? You said your life flipped. When did you know you wanted to write it into a book?
I became obsessed that night, and I was in charge of marketing and fundraising at the Minnesota Opera. So I had a job that was pretty demanding, and we were in season at the time. Um, so when we got and we were living here in Minneapolis, so when we got back here, I just couldn't stop talking about my grandfather's story. I was like a little boy who he's going to bend every conversation to talk about dinosaurs, right? Let me tell you about a Tyrannosaurus, right? So that was me talking to strangers in line at the bank about my grandfather, and quite often someone would say, "Wow, they should make a movie out of that," and I would say, "Yeah, somebody should." And then one day, I said that, and then I heard this voice say, "Write a script," and I just sort of and then the voice said, "Write a script." You know what I mean? And then I started arguing. I've got two small kids. I've got a mortgage. I've got a big job. I've got a wife who's also working, and then the voice was just persistent. So I made a deal. I said, all right, I'll write a script, but if it sucks, nobody knows about it." And the voice then, didn't say, "Okay, yes, live well and prosper." Just shut up. So then I started writing. I'd get home from work, and what I wasn't writing the book. I was writing a one man show. I lived in New York after graduating from college, and got into the arts and the business side of the arts. But I'd always been a performer. I was a performer at Roncalli in high school and then in college. And I moved to New York in part to see, might there be a back door onto the stage? Well, I got there, and it's like I wasn't the first one with that idea. And they made it quite clear that if that's why you're here, get out of our office. Go chase your little actor thing, right? So there was no patience for it. So, at one point I wanted to be a running back for the Green Bay Packers, right? So I thought, well, this is just one of these, kid dreams. So, but I would get free tickets to just about anything because I was in the business. And what I really liked at the time were these solo performers. They call them performance artists, like Spalding Gray and Eric Bogosian. And but the one who was the best was Lily Tomlin, and she had a show on Broadway. These other cats were performing downtown in the Village, but Lily was on Broadway, and her show, which she did at the Capitol in Manitowoc, Signs of Intelligent Life in the Universe, or Search for Signs of Intelligent Life in the Universe, blew my mind. So when I would go see these dudes like Spalding Gray, or I really like this British guy, John Cale, or David Cale, excuse me, and there would be a little voice that would say, "You could do that," and I'd be like, and then I'd be on the subway going back to Brooklyn, just plumbing my life for interesting things. And it seemed like there was nothing that was there. I mean, all of these guys were, traveling in Cambodia and, grew up in London, or, Lily with her big life. And it was like, nothing. That's why I moved here, is because nothing ever interesting happens where I'm from. So it was like, no, I'll work on, becoming an administrator. But there was always that sense of, you can do that. So that's what the voice was talking about when it said, "Write a script." You know what I mean?
When you heard that voice, Patrick, was it in your grandpa's voice or was it your voice?
No, I wasn't even. No, it wasn't my voice.
Oh.
it was my voice, I would have ignored it.
I was thinking about when you mentioned the voice, and as a fellow writer, would you consider that like your muse or something divine, like you were called to bring this story to light? Like, how would you describe that voice?
Hmm. Yeah, I would say guidance, right? I had been working with an executive coach, and and he had me go through this exercise, Strength Finders, right? And I really wanted to get better at raising money so I could make more money. That's why I was working with MJ. So he had me go through this thing, and what I came out with at the end was that my number one thing, right, who I was storyteller, and that was rather disappointing to me because it's like, how am I going to monetize this? so
Yeah.
So I was whining to MJ about, I mean, don't want that to be who I am. What am I supposed to do with this? And he just looked at me and he said, ignore this at your own peril, right? So that kind of shook things a bit. So I think that, that earthquake created a crack that this voice could finally yell through, right? That had always been there. It was kind of an inkling. And just sort of, how do you know, Tina's become kind of a, mahjong whiz, as my wife. How did that happen, right? It's sort of like, I think I can do that. I think I might like that, right? So, but this was insistent. This was absolutely insistent. And I think that MJ, my coach, had really kind of softened the ground for that. So to the point where I made a deal with it, and it's like, all right, if it sucks, you don't have to write it, or no one has to know about it. So when I finished it, and then we were doing this new work at the opera at the time. So, and it was absolutely thrilling. I had sort of become jaded about new works, having been in the business for a long time. It's like, because of the first one I was a part of, when I first moved to New York, it was supposed to be going to Broadway. And there were four: Len Cariou, Austin Pendleton, Werner Klemperer was in it. So it was this piece that was supposed to go to Broadway, and that's when the New York Times review would come out at the midnight edition. So we're there at the cast party. I'm 23. They sent one of the other interns down the street to get it, to bring it to the cast party. Brought the Times, Frank Rich's review. Todd Hames, who longtime head of the Roundabout Theater, won many Tony Awards as a producer. Todd's there in his like early 30s at the bar with a scotch, reading the review. At one point, he just stops, grabs his scotch, slams the rest of it, finishes the review, folds it up, puts it on the bar, and just leaves, right? And I'm watching this going, what the hell's going on? And then all the air just sort of, everything, all this whole thing we'd inflated just died, right? So, and I was kind of devastated because I wanted to come back to Manitowoc and brag about being a part of a show that went to Broadway, even if I was the guy that was making coffee. So, so I'd become rather jaded. We were doing a new work based on a great piece of literature, based on the Grapes of Wrath, which I thought wasn't a good idea for an opera. I'm glad I kept my mouth shut. But when they arrived in the building, and we hadn't done a new work in 10 years, so before my time there, they arrived. The composer Ricky and Gordon. It was just golden days. That the energy in the building, they were there to create the great American opera, and they weren't going to compromise that ambition. They weren't going to apologize for it. They were just all in. And it was absolutely infectious. Transformed the organization. So I'd be getting a contact high off of what they were doing, and then I'd come home, eat, and I'm like, can we just put the kids to bed? I want to write. So then.
So were you writing with the intent of it being a one-man show? Did you know? Okay. Yep.
Yes, without question. There was no intention of trying. I had tried to write a book previously, and it just sort of collapsed under the weight of the whole thing. I didn't know what I was doing. So it was just that. And then later on, after the show had become popular, I started writing a book for a while, and again it collapsed under the weight. So when I finally started writing the book, I read this. I can't even remember the name of it, but this guy talking about the structure. So then I read it two times, and then used it so that, okay, this is going to be the structure. And then when I wrote, I got to the end of it, and I thought, ah, some of this just really isn't that interesting. So then I got, but then I thought, well, I got a lot of, there is stuff that's really interesting. So then, then the voice said, get rid of what's not interesting.
Kill your darlings.
Right.
Yep.
Kill your darlings. Right, right. They needed to be slaughtered. Absolutely. Mowed them down.
So then, Patrick, once you've got this finished book, right, The Accidental Hero, and because it's celebrating this experience between, America and Czech, specifically, then Two Rivers and Domažlic, your book was actually translated into the Czech language, which is pretty interesting. What was that process like? Because what's on the page, do you speak Czech? Like, are you able to read it and say, like, oh, yeah, that's what I was trying to say?
No, no, no. I can order a beer in Czech, and sort of, much to their great embarrassment, they've treated me so well, and I know phrases and this and that. I tried, very difficult language. No, I had, backing up to the show. The show, I did it over there. I was invited to do it over there, and but the more remote areas, not many people speak English. In Prague, no problem. In Pilsen, especially when I would do it when all these Americans would be there for the anniversary of World War II. But I really needed to get, so a friend then translated big blocks of text, which was great. She now is a best-selling Czech author. She was the godmother of my book.
Okay, tell us what that means.
All right, so hang on one second. I'm going to go get the book.
Okay. Tara, are you familiar? Is that something, as a publisher, are you aware of like local authors having a godmother or a godfather for their book?
I think everyone wants one, but I think people are kind of, and I think editors can serve as that, a champion, a supporter. Is that, maybe that's what Pat means, Patrick.
No, it's more formal than that. Okay, so this is the Czech version, and this version, some of the photos, like this is a stained glass window out in Stangleville, Wisconsin. So the guy that laid it out is an artist, a sculptor, world famous sculptor, dear friend. So the book is in its hardcover and done by a publishing house. It's just extraordinary. And they've sold 1,000 copies. The first run now is just about kaput.
So what's a godmother?
All right. So my friend, who's the best-selling author now, I was visiting 2 falls ago, maybe 3, and she said, "Oh, Patrick, will you be in Prague?" And I said yes. And she said, "Well, I need to launch my book. Will you be its godfather?" And I'm like, as if I know what that means, right? And I'm like, although that happens a lot when I'm in the Czech Republic. So I said, sure. And I thought that it was just something that she had created. Then I get to her book launch, and it's in this kind of fancy, wonderful, hip restaurant in Prague, and her publisher's there, her editor's there, and there's a spread of food, and all of these fans of hers are there. And then when it gets time to have the book christening, then it's like, this is the peak event of the whole deal, right? And I'm Forrest Gump, right? She says, "Okay, come with me." And we're sitting, so there are 2 chairs, and I'm sitting right next to Yana, and all these adoring fans are around her. And then there was a musician. There was an American theme to it, so I think that's why Yana wanted me to do this. So then they had someone read an excerpt, and then Yana spoke, and then they asked me to speak, and then they translated what I was saying for the, although a lot of people knew English, And then they got out a bottle of Coca-Cola because of the American scene. And I held Yana's book, and Yana held it as well. So the two of us held the book, and then they poured Coca-Cola onto the book to christen it, right? The most atheistic country in Europe
Yeah,
christens their books.
that's beautiful.
So then when I was there this last December for the christening of my book, Yana and then my friend Amar, I asked them to be the godmother and godfather. And then, so the three of us are holding this book, and they're pouring Czech beer that was brewed in the brewery where this whole event happened. The brewery is so it's a pretty, and then you're there kind of as this guiding spirit and this energy to go out there as the book is launched out into the world.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so Patrick, you've got the book in English, it's in Czech. You've got a one-man stage show that you do in English, but you've performed it in Czech.
Yeah.
And now you've got a cool collaboration that's coming up. Can you tell us a little bit more what you've got planned?
Yeah, so that's Danny and Michelle Jarabek, the leaders of the award-winning band Copperbox, which is right now in the summertime in Wisconsin. They are with Bob Euchre gone. Now they are the sound of Wisconsin in the summertime. They play many times every week. I mean, they're just jam-packed booked. I saw Mona and I, my wife and I, ran into them, saw them for the first time in Door County 3 years ago, and I was just like, holy cow, what is going on here, right? So and then at the end, and they're playing all these different musical instruments. There is a Czech saying that is every Czech is a musician, right? And so they finish up, and Danny, place is going crazy, and then Danny starts saying good night in all these different languages, and then the last one he says is Dobre noc, and I'm like, that's Czech. I think this guy might be Czech. And I turned to Mo and I said, honey, I need to go talk to that guy. So then I told him about my grandfather's story. Yes, he's Czech. Yes, his great grandfather grew up right down the street, down the road from where my grandfather grew up. So then we stayed in touch. I finished the book. I sent Danny a copy, and then we talked, and we saw them again, and it became my favorite band. Just loved them. So then I sent him a copy of the book, and then it was about a year and a half ago that I get a text saying, hey, Pat, Michelle's giving me a hard time. She says she hasn't seen me with a book in my hand in 10 years. I think it's only 3. He said, I love your book, right? And then I said, oh, thank you. What do you like about it? And blah, blah, blah. And we're going back, and I said, we should collaborate. He said, I'd love to, right? And then we really didn't know what that meant. And then we kind of started ideating on things, and then but they're so busy that it was hard to get some time. So then I stayed with them last fall in November, the week of Thanksgiving, Monday night, and because I said, you really need to see the show, and they said, oh, come do it in Oshkosh. And I thought, okay, I'll be doing like in a bar for their friends or something. I did it in their living room for Danny and Michelle and their 11-year-old son Bo.
Lucky. Oh, cool.
So yeah, so they get a command performance, and then after that, we're going for a walk the next day and talking about what we might do, and then what we are doing now is that they play for 20 minutes, half hour ahead of time, because we had a gig in Fergus Falls, Minnesota, doing this in April, and then they play kind of as a soundtrack during the show. They're really good improvisers. So some of this we rehearsed, but then some of it's just the magic that happens on stage. They are badass performers. I mean, just always just on top of it, and funny and engaging, and the audience loves them every single time, right? It's how I aspired to be as a performer as well. So I think that this wonderful energy really worked. And then that picture is from when we were in the main square of Domažlice, Czech Republic, sister city of Two Rivers, because he said, oh, I've always wanted to go. Would you mind if I said, absolutely. So then Danny brought his little button box accordion, And the Czechs, every Czech's a musician, so that also means they have very high standards, and they don't really believe that an American is going to be able to come and do their music as well. They were just smitten with Danny's playing, and then I had a gig that's coming up on October 22nd at the PAC in Appleton, and I said, why don't you guys, because they live in Oshkosh, why don't you guys just let's do this thing together. I'll make sure you get your fee, and we'll just do it. So we've already sold 2/3 of the tickets.
Okay, viewers, so if you want to take this in, if you want to see The Accidental Hero collaboration with Copperbox on October 22nd at the PAC in Appleton, how do they get tickets, Patrick?
Go to the PAC website, or just Google Accidental Hero, which is the name of the show, Appleton PAC, and then it will take you right there. We're also doing, sort of as a warm up for this, we're going to be doing it at the Washington House in Two Rivers, but only 100 seats. So at the Washington House in Two Rivers on October the 20th. So you can just get in touch with the Washington House or get there in person. We're doing that as a fundraiser, because we'll spend the day rehearsing it, and then we'll do it so that when we go into Appleton, we won't be going in cold.
It's a phenomenal show, viewers. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend. Hey, before we have to wrap up, guys, I would love to know, author to author to author, what are you currently reading? Tara, tell us about what's on your reading list.
This is Fahrenheit 182, which is a memoir from the bassist of the band, Mark Hoppus, and it was recommended by my teenage son, who's not a huge reader, but he was just smitten by this story from the alternative rock scene, and he's like, you got to read this book. And it wasn't on my radar. I've not been a Blink 182 fan, but I got into it, and it was great because we're the same generation. So all these memories from the 80s and 90s, and you always love a success story, the grit that it takes, the dedication, the focus, the sacrifice of, a college degree, or, when you're really into it. So it's a very good book, and it's not something I would have picked up. So I always love getting book recommendations. What are you guys reading?
Ooh, Patrick, tell us what you're reading. But wait, so the question, the verification point is, you don't have to be a Blink 182 fan to pick up and appreciate that book.
Yeah, I mean, just anyone who's ever had a dream or a goal or wants to do something a little unconventional can just root for this band and see the twists and turns. And another great thing is other musician memoirs that I've read is often an element of addiction or, disaster. And this doesn't have that, like you can make it and not succumb to some of those temptations that get a lot of our successful artists.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. Patrick, what are you reading?
Yeah, Nature's Metropolis. This was recommended by a professor I ran into on the road. It's about how Chicago became the capital of the interior, and the writer grew up in Madison, so he would always see Chicago as being very different from bucolic Madison, where he grew up. Whereas the truth is that Madison in that area, and Manitowoc, where I grew up, was also altered tremendously from the way that it was before the Europeans started coming. So how we who grew up in the hinterland, which is the term for where we are, right, fed that extraordinary metropolis of all of this activity and trade to then become one of the world's great cities. And it's where all of the Czechs, most of the Czechs in Wisconsin, went through. They would get to Chicago because it was the largest Czech-speaking population in the world outside of Prague and Vienna. Oh. So that's why I'm reading that.
So there's a Czech component to the actual book?
No, just well, there's an immigrant component. But me trying to figure out, well, why did they go to Chicago, and what was all of that, and how Chicago just has always been reinventing itself, I moved to New York. I wasn't interested in living in Chicago. I don't like the Bears.
They
So,
still suck. So.
yeah, written by someone from Manitowoc, Jimmy Krieger. So,
Hey, I just wanted to say before we have to wrap up, I just finished reading The Last Overland. This is like an epic travel adventure. These guys repeated an adventure that had happened 60 years prior when that Land Rover was new. A team of 6 guys had driven 2 of them from London all the way down to Singapore. And so like in, the 1950s, that was pretty epic. Now the grandson of one of those guys, they found this vehicle. It was like trashed on an island in the South Atlantic. An enthusiast brought it back to London, totally like restored it to its original. Still, it looks pretty like scrappy. And they repeated the adventure, but went from Singapore 13,000 miles back to London. So, especially being in a wheelchair, having a travel adventure, it just expands my world. It was fantastic.
Wonderful.
Wow. 3 works of nonfiction.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Well,
It's kind
Patrick,
of my wheelhouse.
thank you so much for joining
Yeah.
us this morning. I
Awesome.
cannot believe how quickly 30 minutes has flown by.
Boom.
Yeah. We
I
really loved
wanted a
having you.
translator, so I have now super titles in Czech, and she was the one who translated my book. So I want to give Slavka credit for doing that.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Shelf Talk with Tara and Tina. Tara Huck, I'm Tina Prigge, and then our special guest today was Patrick Dewane, author of The Accidental Hero. Take care, everyone.